Venezuela, 1998. To the outside world, it was a Caribbean paradise, an oil-rich democracy. But inside, a storm was brewing. For decades, the country had been ruled by a two-party system. While oil prices soared in the 70s, the wealth never trickled down to the people. By the late 90s, half the population lived in poverty, and corruption had hollowed out the state. Then came a man who promised to burn the old house down. Hugo Chávez was not a traditional politician. He was a former paratrooper who had led a failed coup in 1992, and he spoke the language of the barrios, the slums. He called his movement the Bolivarian Revolution, named after the South American liberator, Simon Bolivar. His goal, a socialism of the 21st century. In Ijojojo, Chavez made good on his first promise, a new constitution. It renamed the country the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and centralized incredible power in the presidency. This was the birth of Chavismo, powerful blend of fierce nationalism, anti-imperialism, and a promise to finally put the poor first. For the first few years, the revolution was fueled by a miraculous stroke of luck, a global oil boom. As prices climbed toward $100 a barrel, Chavez had a seemingly endless checkbook to fund his vision. By the mid-2000s, Venezuela was the shining center of the pink tide sweeping across Latin America. Chavez launched the Misiones, massive social programs funded directly by that oil revenue. Mission Barrio, Adentro, brought Cuban doctors into slums where no physician had ever set foot. Mission Robinson taught millions of people to read and write. Mission Merkel provided subsidized food to those who had been completely forgotten by the market. To his supporters, Chavez was a messiah. Poverty rates plummeted, and the Gini coefficient, a measure of inequality, became one of the lowest in the entire region. But this progress came with a hidden, structural price. The revolution didn't build a new economy. It just spent the old one faster. Instead of investing in infrastructure or diversifying industry, the government nationalized everything from steel mills to grocery stores. Private investment fled, and the country became almost completely dependent on a single commodity, oil. As Chavez's popularity grew, so did his confrontation with the West. He famously called President George W. Bush the devil at the United Nations and used oil diplomacy to buy influence across the Caribbean. However, internal cracks were widening. In 2002, a short-lived coup attempt by the opposition nearly toppled him. This event made Chavez permanently suspicious of dissent. He began closing TV stations, harassing judges, and packing the military with loyalists. By 2011, the Comandante faced a new enemy he couldn't defeat: cancer. In March 2013, the man who had defined Venezuelan life for 14 years was dead. He left behind a hand-picked successor, Nicolás Maduro, and a ticking economic time bomb. Nicolás Maduro inherited a revolution, but he didn't inherit Chavez's charisma or his luck. In 2014, global oil prices collapsed. The socialist paradise was suddenly broke. Because the government had implemented strict price controls and nationalized farms, domestic production had vanished. When the government could no longer afford to import food and medicine, the shelves went empty. What followed was one of the worst economic collapses in modern history outside of wartime. Hyperinflation spiraled out of control. The bolivar became worthless. At its peak, inflation hit over 1,000,000%, turning life savings into the price of a single loaf of bread. This triggered a massive exodus. Since 2014, over 7 million Venezuelans have fled the country, the largest displacement in the Western Hemisphere. As the opposition gained ground, the Maduro government shifted from a hybrid democracy to outright authoritarianism. It stripped the National Assembly of its power and relied on the military to suppress massive street protests. By 2019, the world watched as two men claimed the presidency: Maduro and the opposition leader Juan Guaidó. While dozens of countries recognized Guaidó, Maduro held the palace, the guns, and the gold. The revolution had transformed from a popular movement into a survival regime. Today, the Bolivarian Revolution is a cautionary tale of the resource curse. It began as a genuine cry for justice from an excluded population, achieving real gains in literacy and healthcare. But by tying the fate of the nation to a single resource and dismantling democratic checks and balances, it led to a humanitarian catastrophe. The murals of Chavez still decorate the walls of Caracas, their red paint fading under the tropical sun. For some, they represent a lost dream of dignity. For others, the start of a long nightmare. The Bolivarian Revolution didn't just change Venezuela. It redefined the limits of populism in the 21st century. As the country struggles to find a path forward, the ghost of the Comandante still looms large over a nation waiting for its next chapter.